Hermes Trismegistus speaks. O Egypt, Egypt, of thy religious rites none will survive, but idle tales which thy children's children will not believe. Not will survive, but words graven upon stones that tell of thy piety. Asclepius, third, Latin. Never has there arisen a more complicated problem than that of Manetho. Among the Egyptians who wrote in Greek, Manetho the priest holds a unique place because of his comparatively early date, the 3rd century BC, and the interest of his subject matter, the history and religion of ancient Egypt. His works in their original form would possess the highest importance and value for us now, if only we could recover them. But until the fortunate discovery of a papyrus, which will transmit the authentic Manetho, we can know his writings only from fragmentary and often distorted quotations preserved chiefly by Josephus and by the Christian chronographers Africanus and Eusebius, with isolated passages in Plutarch, Theophilus, Aelian, Porphyrius, Diogenes, Laertius, Theodoratus, Latus, Malleus, the Scholia to Plato, and the Etymologicum Magnum. Like Berosus, who is of slightly earlier date, Manetho testifies to the growth of an international spirit in the Alexandrian age. Each of these barbarians wrote in Greek an account of his native country, and it stirs the imagination to think of their endeavor to bridge the gulf of and instruct all Greek-speaking people, that is to say, the whole civilized world of their time, in the history of Egypt and Chaldea. What was that now? Chaldea? No, Chalcidic. Chalcidic Greek, like Etruscan, is written from right to left, like other ancient alphabets. And the linear A thing is really mind-boggling. But these two writers stand alone. The Greeks indeed wrote from time to time of the wonders of Egypt, works no longer extant. But it was long before an Egyptian successor of Manetho appeared, Ptolemy of Mendes, probably under Augustus. The writings of Manetho, however, continued to be read with interest, and his Egyptian history was used for special purposes by the Jews when they engaged in polemic against Egyptians in order to prove their extreme antiquity. Manetho's religious writings are known to us mainly through references in Plutarch's treatise on Isis and Osiris. Our knowledge of Manetho is for the most part meager and uncertain, But three statements of great probability may be made. They concern his native place, his priesthood at Heliopolis, and his activity in the introduction of the cop of Serapis. The name Manetho has been explained as meaning truth of thought, and a certain priest under dynasty, that's a lot of numbers, is described as first priest of the truth of thought. According to Dr. Cerny, Manetho is from the groom, herdsman, horse, but the word does not seem to occur elsewhere as a proper name. In regard to the date of Manetho, Cecilius in one passage gives us information that he lived later than Berosus. Elsewhere, he puts Manetho as almost contemporary with Berosus, or a little later. Berosus, who the sacred tree in the great hall, Heliopolis, the tree on which the goddess Sisset, the lady of letters, the mistress of the library, wrote down with her own hand the names and deeds of the rulers. He did nothing more than communicate to the Greek world what the goddess had noted down, but he did so with the full sense and superiority which relied on sacred records of the Egyptians in opposition to Herodotus, whom he was contradicting. His native town, Sabantus, was visited as a place of learning by Solon. Manetho was a priest in residence there, and the Greek culture of that place must have been formative influence upon Manetho at an early age. In the introduction of the statue of Serapis to Alexandria, as described by Plutarch, Manetho the Egyptian was associated with the Greek Timotheus as a priestly advisor of King Ptolemy Soter. It is natural to suppose that the cult of Serapis itself, which was a conflation of Egyptian and Greek ideas intended to be acceptable to both nationalities, had already been organized with the help of the two priests in the magnificent temple of Artotis. The Egyptian quarter in the west of Alexandria had doubtless been built. The date is not certain. According to Jerome, Serapis entered Alexandria in 286 BC, while the Armenian version of the Chronicle of Zubius says 278. Serapis came to Alexandria and became resident there. Perhaps the two statements refer to different stages in the development of the cult. If the former describes the entry of the statue by Araxes, the later may possibly refer to the final establishment of the whole theology. As a proof that the work of Manetho was building up the cult of spheres must not be belittled, it may suffice to refer to the inscription of the name at the base of a marble bust found in the ruins of the temple of Serapis at Carthage. The name is so uncommon that the probability is that the bust which originally stood on the base represented the Egyptian Manetho, and was erected in his honor because of his effective contribution to the organization of the cult of Serapis. Hence it is not impossible also that the following reference in the Papyrus 241 BC may be to Manetho of Sabantus. It occurs in a document containing correspondence by the temple seal. The person named was evidently a well-known man in priestly circles. He was probably our Manetho, the writer on Egyptian history and religion, and he lived to a considerable age. We could do the Sothic cycle. From the Egyptian history of Manetho, who composed his account in 3 books. These deal with the gods, the demigods, the spirits of the dead, and the mortal kings who ruled Egypt down to Darius, king of the Persians. The first man or god in Egypt was Hephaestus, in his own renown among the Egyptians as the discoverer of fire. His son, Helios, the sun, was succeeded by Sosos. Then followed, in turn, Cronus, Osiris, Typhon, brother of Osiris, and lastly, Horus, old horseback riders. They were building fires and riding horses, son of Osiris and Isis. These were the first to hold sway in Egypt. Thereby his kingship passed from one to another in unbroken succession down to Biddy's bites for 13,900 years. The year I take, however, to be a lunar one, consisting, that is, of 30 days, which we now call a month. The Egyptians used formerly to style a year. After the gods, demigods reigned for 1,255 years, and again another line of kings held sway, 1,800 to 17 years. Then came 30 or more kings of Memphis, reigning 1,790 years, and then again 10 kings of this, reigning 350 years. There followed to rule the spirits of the dead and demigods for 5813 years. The total of the last groups amounts to 11,000 years. These, however, being lunar periods, or sun months, but the whole truth of which the Egyptians tell, the rule of gods, demigods, and spirits of the dead is reckoned to have been comprised of 24,900 lunar years, which makes 2,206 solar years. Now, if you care to compare these figures with Hebrew chronology, you'll find that they are in perfect harmony. Egypt is called Mestrum. Eratosthenes, king of Thebes. Apollodorus, the chronology recorder, another dynasty of Egyptian kings, the Thebans, as they are called, 38 kings ruling for 1076 years. This dynasty began in Anno Mundi 2900 and came to an end in Anno Mundi 3045, 3976 in quotes. The knowledge of these kings, he says, Eratosthenes took from Egyptian records and lists, and at the king's command he translated them into Greek language as follows. Of the Theban kings is 38 dynasties, ruling 1124 years after the dispersion. The first was Menes of Thebes, whose name being interpreted means everlasting. The second king of Thebes was Athosis, son of Menes, for 59 years. And then the Thebans. Hey, I wonder if it's going to get to the 11th king. 17th king. There it is. There it is right there. There it is. There it is over here. The 22nd ruler of Thebes was Tokris, a queen, not a king. Her name means Athena, the victress. And she reigned for 6 years and a month, 3570. So it's Thebans. That's just a quote from Manetho. The New York Times, Tuesday, September 25th, 1984. New analysis hints ancient explorers mapped Antarctica. What's going on? For years, a few imaginative authors have argued, based on 18th century maps, that the ice-covered continent of Antarctica was discovered and mapped by ancient civilization, perhaps one from another planet. The later proposition was dismissed by most geographers and historians as preposterous. Nevertheless, a careful comparison of information appearing on these maps with what is now known of the continent has led to leading geologists. This is an article. Pertaining to an interpretation. A chart drawn by Orontes Naeus in 1531 may have been based on early explorations. Well, I would think so. Well, we'll talk about a complete outline. It'll say down here, the geography of the southern continent, he concluded, may thus have been known in its broad configuration before the mid-16th century. While the evidence bodes thus, I have no hesitation in reminding the reader, as myself, of Sir Walter Raleigh's admonition that conjectures painted on maps do serve only to mislead such discoverers as rashly believe them. Wherever he pressed that later. Get back to the antipodes. Oh, that'll be a good one for later, too. The ancient world's mythologies regarding a magnetic mountain, four-directional rivers, and other more fantastical features at the North Pole are shockingly consistent. But what did the earliest known explorers, historians, and cartographers have to say about the subject? Pytheas, the earliest recorded explorer of the North Pole in his 4th century BC, claimed to discover an island he called Thule, the farthest northern land, and gave an account sounding straight out of ancient mythology. In his lost book entitled On the Ocean, Pytheas wrote, "The island was more than 40,000 stadia, and in this region there were no larger either land, properly so called, or sea or air, but a kind of substance, and created from all these elements, resembling of sea lungs, and a thing which the earth, the sea, and all the elements are held in suspension. This is a sort of bond to hold all together, which you can neither walk nor sail upon." Pytheas claimed upon reaching the northernmost point, accessible, the land, air, and water somehow became like one substance, similar to a jellyfish, and was completely impassable. Little remains of Pytheas' original account, but second-hand sources like Strabo inform us regarding the inhabitants of the surrounding northern isles. He says that all the animals are in domesticated fruits, there is utter dearth, some scarcity of others, and that the people live on millet and other herbs, and on fruits and roots, and where there are grain, honey, the people get their beverage also from them. As for the grain, he says, since they have no pure sunshine, they pound it out in large storehouses, after first gathering it here's thither, for the threshing floors become useless because of this lack of sunshine and because of the rains. Pliny the Elder also wrote of Pytheas' journey in his natural history, stating that on summer days the sun approaches nearer to the top of the world,